Jason. How have you been?
I'm good, Chris. How about you?
Oh, good. Welcome to Leading is Serving.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be back.
Yes.
I've been on a little bit of a vacation with my family.
You have.
I say family as in kid-free vacation.
And I'm sitting here upset that I didn't get to go.
I know you were rather bitter about that.
I was bitter.
But
that's okay. Now that you're back.
We traveled with some friends of ours from years back, from when we lived in Colorado.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying we have more like friend slots available.
Okay, good.
In our lives. That
Okay,
if
good.
you want to go on vacation, we're glad to do that.
Okay, that's good. I just wanted to go to the beach. I do enjoy hanging out with you, but I wanted to go to the beach.
It was nice. It was nice. This was one of the first places we've been that had little like grass roof shelters on the beach.
Yeah.
And they had these, they're literally like beds. And so it was like big canvas colored foam beds rather than lounge chairs. And so beds with pillows, and it was maybe the most comfortable. It was cool. And so, we had shade and
That's awesome.
saw the biggest stingray I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Yeah. Is big enough that we could each grab onto a wing on either side of the head and ride it, kind of thing.
Oh my goodness.
It was massive. And it scared the
the
life out of me because I was right over it and I was like, oh, look, that rock looks like it has a face. And then I went and panicked and was like, ah. So it was massive. It was just so majestic though. It was cool. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway,
so
I'm sorry. I just kind of totally commanded the first minutes of the
appreciated
podcast. But vacation was
It made
cool.
me want to go on vacation even more.
What did you do during that week?
I worked, but I mean, it was work week. It wasn't as pretty as sitting on a beach, but that's okay.
Right.
But hey, it is what it is.
If we go back a few episodes, you went to Florida without me. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm sure I did.
Yeah.
That sounds like something I would do. So what do we get to talk about today? Because I want to get started on this. Let's dive into some of this important information. Because
absolutely. Well, I want to go back and kind of talk through the 5 voices again.
I've talked to a lot of friends about this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we're reviewing this because it definitely comes up in conversation multiple times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this has been kind of a game changer for me because I've always been a junkie around this. So I've always enjoyed Myers-Briggs and DISC and all the different things that are out there that kind of been the standards for years, right? This is the first one that there's all been good things and truth and but this is the first one that I've been able to talk to other people about. Mm-hmm. They grasp onto the language and they start seeing it, and it becomes part of our conversation, ongoing. It's not just a one and done. Hey, were you an INT what?
Right.
It's just it's kind of become just part of the common language,
right?
Which, surprise, surprise, is part of the goal of leadership culture.
Correct.
Of creating a common language with your team.
It totally
so
is.
that you're on the same page, that you're talking about the same things, that you have that common understanding. And so that's what I think the 5 Voices has done for me, is that I see insights into relationships that I have and insights into myself that I'm like, oh, that, I need to work on that. That might be something that, because our greatest strengths can also be our greatest weaknesses.
Agreed.
And if you used your strength in the wrong place at the wrong time, it can be frustrating for people.
Totally.
I'm a dreamer. I'm a big picture.
Yep.
I love that. Mm-hmm. And if I'm in a meeting that is all about the details and in the weeds of how we're going to get from here to there by tomorrow.
Yep.
And I want to pull everything out of the weeds and I want to look at the big picture, which frustrates all the people that enjoy getting things done and checking stuff off. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that. And so this has been super helpful for me. Yeah. And so, so just wanted to go back over the voices.
Okay.
And there's a specific order to this that we're going to go from what would be considered kind of the quietest voice in the room.
Okay.
If you're on a leadership team, if you're in an organization, you want to have a really good balance of these, so that you're not you're not all coming from the exact same direction.
Right.
You're gonna go in circles at times if that's the case.
Totally.
So you want to have a balance, and in that, some of the voices are softer and louder than others. And so we're going to start with the softest voice, because if you're in a team, that's the person you want to give input first,
right?
Because those louder voices can shut it down.
Right.
And so we're going to talk about the nurturer first.
Okay.
The nurturer is your champion of people. They're your relational harmony in an organization, on a team, in a family. They're the ones like, a car engine that runs with all these metal parts abrasive against each other. You have to keep oil in your engine or it locks up.
Right.
The nurturer is that relational oil in your organization. They champion people and values. And the nurturers actually represent about 43% of the population.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So a nurturer, and real quickly, you're a blend of all 5 voices.
Okay.
So even if you're not a nurturer first voice, you do have some nurture within you. It's just gets, how often does it come out?
Right.
How much energy does it take to come out?
Right.
And how does it get filtered by your primary voices?
Yes.
Okay. So the nurturer just loves people, and they're very, very much oriented in the present, meaning, they're concerned about the here and now. What's happening today, the decisions we make today, how does that affect people? And so, you've got people on your organization at the farthest end of the reach, maybe from your exec team. The nurturer intuitively understands how that person will react to something that seems very distant to them even. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so they'll understand the ripples of decisions and strategies and, things that you implement throughout your team and your organization. They'll understand that for other people as well. They can put themselves in other shoes really easy. That relational harmony is just key. That's what they're fighting for.
Okay.
Sometimes even above profit.
Really? Okay.
Even above, hey, we've got a goal we got to get done by the end of this quarter. If that's going to disrupt the harmony of the team and the organization, we can push that back a quarter.
Right.
They're going to be willing to make those types of decisions, and they're the relational red flags in the room of going, hey, people, slow down.
Right.
Is this a cost there's a people cost to these decisions. So a way that you can liberate nurturers, help them to feel free to lead in their voice. Okay. Because they are the quietest. Right. They will tend to not speak up. Right. Okay. And because, in part they kind of worry
about the relational side of
right.
things.
If I bring an idea, or if I bring some feedback or something, how's that going to affect? Right. So a great way to liberate nurturers would be to say, hey, we absolutely value your contribution. And we want to take the time to draw out what you think. That make it that relational aspect of, no, I absolutely value you. Yeah. I want to hear what you have to say, and I'm willing to sit and listen and draw that out. And I'm willing to invest and believe in you that that you are good enough. I mean, nurturers have the tendency to feel like I don't belong at the table. I don't know why I have this seat. I don't know why I have a position of leadership. And so building into them and saying, no, I absolutely believe in you. You deserve this spot. You bring value to this team. Tell me what you're thinking. Spend quality time with them. Right. Just spend time, get to know them, ask about their family, their friendships, their relationships. Care for others, even when you may not feel it's that important. Because some of the voices are a little more task-oriented.
I was going to say, I think you're speaking to one of those voices.
If you're leaning toward tasks, sit down with the nurturer and say, how you doing? Right. That's huge.
That's truly a culture thing, like we were talking about earlier. Like, it's a cultural thing to be able to have the position or get put in a position where you can recognize that you have value in your opinion. Right. Right. Because so in this framing of gives us a great opportunity to look into these different things and help bring these things out. Right. This is great. Right. Like you said, it's the language that helps us get to the better good.
Absolutely.
Just great.
Yeah. And each of these voices do have what we call a weapon system. Okay, that you can use your voice for good. So you can bring that nurturing relational oil care to a team environment, right? Right. But you can also use your voice as a weapon. And this applies to all 5 voices. All right. So the weapon system for a nurturer is not actually an active one; it's a passive one. They will withhold care.
Oh.
So that relational care, that relational oil, they will withhold that. And so that tends to happen when something triggers their values or the relational harmony, or it triggers, there's a pressure, there's a stress, there's something that, it causes that weapon to come out.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Some of the triggers for nurturers can be feeling like they're taken for granted. That, they may not understand, why do I have a place at the table? But even when I do throw something out, you take it and own my idea, and why am I here?
Right.
They feel taken for granted. They feel like they're not heard. They're the softest voice. So, taking the time to make sure they feel like they're heard, or the values are being ignored.
Right.
That, that people that they care about, it may not even be direct to them, but somebody else is being,
that they care about.
Treated unfairly. They care about them.
Yeah.
And so, I'm done.
Right.
And so for a nurturer, it becomes very transactional. That the care, which for a task-oriented person, may never notice the difference.
Right.
Because it's about, about getting things done. And a nurturer will not necessarily make waves. They'll just withhold care, and it becomes a little more cold, a little more transactional. And, you lose that voice in your organization, on your team. And that hurts.
Well, and it's like you said, it's pulling the oil out of the engine. Like you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like where the abrasiveness comes out because you don't have that relational oil there.
Right.
And that is huge.
Yeah.
It's so real.
I have a good friend that that lost a car because there had been a modification to the exhaust system, and the car had actually been burning oil and had only owned it 2 weeks, and the engine froze.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And had no idea because of how the modification happened. You couldn't see it. There was no evidence that this car was, it was rough. And so that's what we risk if we don't value our nurturers in our lives. And the nurturers are 43% of the population. Right. So there's a good chance on your team. You've got some pretty strong nurturers, either first voice or at least second voice.
Right.
So.
Wow. That was really good.
Yeah. Nurturers can easily be overlooked. And, part of understanding the 5 voices is bringing value to every voice, because every voice is necessary. Every voice needs to be heard and valued. And doing it in a healthy fashion, right? So, because like you said, every one of these voices can have a weapon side of it as well. Sure. And I'm sure that the better we understand it and use it in our culture to recognize it for what it is, the healthier we can all be, the healthier we can work together. Right. I love that idea. Right. I love that idea. Absolutely. So stay tuned for the next 4 episodes where we talk about the other 4 voices. Yeah. Next week will be the creative. Okay. That's the next, as we move up the volume chart of voices, creative is the next quietest voice from the nurturer. Okay. So, and then we'll eventually get to the louder voices. So there you go. There you go. We can dive into those too. So we've got a great interview coming today. We do. I'm excited about this one. Yeah. This is really cool. Another young leader in our community, Jewell. She's with Jewell Law Office, and works in the area locally in Greenwood. Yep, and works in the area of elder law. She does, helping families navigate Medicaid and waiver and all that stuff. Yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff there. Yeah. So buckle up. This is going to be a great interview in terms of some great information. Even if you're not in this predicament, I would tell you to stay tuned, because there's she has a great amount of wisdom, and I'm looking forward to her sharing that with us. Yeah. And this is not just, this is not just about family. This has touches within our, as business owners and leaders, and in our current position in life, totally. to plan better for the future. Too. So stay tuned. Yeah, stay tuned. We'll be back with Kim here in just a moment. Well, hi, Kim.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Doing good. Welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you kind of got to where you're at today.
Well, I am Jewell. The long story, not so long though, is I'm born and raised in Bloomington, Indiana. Grew up IU world, and then went away for college. Never wanted to be an attorney. My husband wanted to be an attorney, and I went into financial planning. So after graduating from undergrad, I took all of my licensures, was a licensed financial planner, and I managed a bunch of financial planners all over the state of Indiana, and then a little bit in northern Illinois.
Oh, wow.
The company wasn't doing very well, and I didn't really want to go to one of the big names out there. And so I was trying to figure out what I should do next and talked to my aunt during a birthday party. And she said, well, why don't you become an elder law attorney? I thought, I don't know. It never crossed my mind at all. Right. Yeah. I didn't want to be an attorney. I did not want to be in the courtroom. I all of those movies that you see where they're in the courtroom, yelling things, that just didn't appeal to me at all. And so for whatever reason, it hadn't crossed my mind that you could be an attorney and not be in a courtroom. Oh. So after that, I talked to my husband because I said, you're the one that wanted to be an attorney. You got into law school. You deferred your admission because of a job that I got. He ended up working for the prosecutor's office in our hometown for a while and then said, maybe law is not for me. Oh. But I wanted his support in becoming a lawyer, doing his dream. And thankfully, he was amazing. He said, absolutely, go for it. If this is something you think you want to do, you should do it. So I applied to law school. During that process, I had to leave the financial planning company, went into banking. So learned a lot about retail banking. From there, got into law school, met an attorney through the bank where I was still working. And she is the attorney who truly wrote the books that all of the other attorneys in our area of law use for estate planning and estate administrations and guardianships.
Oh, wow.
And she's amazing. She's still alive. She's in her late 70s and still practicing.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow. And she took time for me as a law student to, we would go like once a week or once every other week. And she'd say, Kim, we're going to go have a lesson. And so we would go into the conference room and she would say, today you're going to learn about whatever, X. Mm-hmm. And she would go through the whole thing and explain it to me. And it was better education than I could have ever received in law school.
Oh, wow.
Law school teaches you to learn and think like a lawyer, but not actually to be a lawyer. Okay. Whereas this attorney was teaching me how to be a lawyer.
Right.
Unfortunately, we disagreed on whether or not a woman can have children and be successful as a lawyer. And I felt that I could do it. And she said that no female could have children and be a successful lawyer. So when I graduated from law school, I went to work for a bank. I was handling estate administrations. So when somebody, generally with a good amount of money, passed away, they would name the bank as their personal representative to wrap up their final affairs, make distributions to their kids.
Okay.
And so I worked for them for quite some time, or I don't know, 4 years. Felt like quite some time, handling estate administrations. It was great. I enjoyed it. I learned a ton. It was a really great opportunity for me to see kind of the backside of what I had done when I worked for the previous attorney, because I was working with people when they were alive.
Right.
We were doing estate plans. We were trying to put things into place. Once somebody passes away, those documents can't be changed.
Right.
And so I was then trying to administer, and sometimes I would look at a document and I'd say, I don't actually know what this attorney is trying to say here. I'm not sure what this is supposed to, I'm not sure who this is supposed to go to, or it says it's supposed to go to this, but then it doesn't say what happens if that person also passed away. So I really learned a lot of really important drafting information or kind of mental knowledge for future.
How not to do it.
Yeah, and how to make sure that my documents were understandable after somebody passed away.
So somebody else doesn't have that problem.
Yeah, so in case it wasn't me administering their estate administration, that somebody else could know what the deceased person's wishes were. And from there, then I went to work for a small law firm that really focused more on elder law. So they focused most of their practice on Medicaid qualifications for people who need assistance paying for nursing homes. They also do the estate planning, also do the probate administration. In this particular instance, I had the amazing opportunity to work for an attorney who wrote the test that other attorneys take to be certified elder law attorneys. He can't be one because he wrote the test.
Oh.
So it's kind of silly. Yeah, he cannot take the test because he wrote the test. Yeah. So therefore, he is not considered a certified elder law attorney because he can't take it. I now qualify. I've been in practice as an elder law attorney actively for 5 years. But I don't have time to study for it at the moment. But I'd really like to go that route and get that certification so I can formally call myself an elder law attorney. Okay. So right now I'm an attorney who practices in the area of elder law.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
And then about 2 years ago, I went on my own, hung my own shingle. I now have Jewell Law Office in the Greenwood area, so I'm a little bit closer to home than I was previously. And have a bit of freedom, kind of, sort of, to get to kids' sporting events and handle all of the mom stuff, homework, things like that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, you've had an amazing time with some very intricate people in your journey that have been very, I'm sure, influential for you.
Incredibly. I am so incredibly grateful for the journey I've taken to get here. As I mentioned early on, I never wanted to be an attorney.
I know.
It was not at all on my agenda. I wanted nothing to do with it. And I just feel so incredibly fortunate that I have had the most amazing people in my life and the history that now helps me to do my job, in my opinion, well.
Right.
Because I have the financial background. I can read a statement. If somebody brings me their financial retirement statement or investment statement, they usually say, I have no idea what this is. Just here, you tell me.
There's numbers.
Right, yeah. There's numbers and words, and I don't know what they say. And I have a good understanding of a lot of those. Now, there's more financial planning companies out now than there were when I was practicing. And I don't have my licenses anymore, so I don't do any of that.
Okay.
But I still have enough knowledge that I can look at a statement and say, oh, okay, I know what this is. I know, what that is. So.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, because most people, are probably just as surprised as Chris and I at the moment going, oh, you don't have to be in the courtroom.
Right.
You do not.
But, beyond the legalese, the financial statements, the words, the numbers, all of that stuff, what for you has been like that intangible benefit of practicing in the area of elder law, of helping families like this? What is that? Tell us a little bit about that, the human side of the journey, not just the legalese side.
The legalized, yeah. The whole reason that I wanted to go into this area is, one, I absolutely love working with the older demographic. I could sit and listen to stories told by people who have lived longer than me forever. And I'll listen to the same story 5 times. I don't care. Yeah. I have so much patience with an older adult. It's not even funny. I should not be a teacher. The kids tell me the same thing. I'm like, yeah, you already told me that. But I don't know why. For me, it's adults. My sister's a teacher or was until recently. She could handle the kids all day long.
Right.
But I just feel one of the main reasons that I left the bank and went into private practice is because I wanted to really help people. And not that people with a lot of money don't need help.
Right.
But it was really challenging for me when somebody would call and say, hey, before my mom died, she was giving me $4,000 every single month just so I could pay my bills. I want that $4,000. Or could you just go ahead and make $1 million distribution to me because I need to whatever. Oh, wow. And I'd say, well, I'm really sorry that your mom was supporting you to that extent in your 50s. But she didn't make provisions in her will for me to continue to make $4,000 a month distributions to you. Now, whether or not that was an error in drafting or whether that was intentional on her part, I don't know. Right. I just had to follow the document. And a lot of times it was hard for me because these people were just expecting me to hand out money to them, and they weren't going out and getting a job or doing anything to try to help themselves to pay their own bills.
Right. Oh, wow.
So I really wanted to help what I call the everyday person, people more like me. People were, the people that I'm working with have worked hard. They've saved. Yeah. They've tried to do the right things. And for whatever reason, life has handed them kind of a bad situation or a situation that they're not prepared for.
Right.
And so I want to help. I want to be able to step in when somebody's going through a really probably very emotional, likely traumatic experience. And I can help them along the way because I know what they need to do in order to get the assistance that they need and they can qualify for. And I can help them through that. And I generally can do it very compassionately.
Right.
And that's what I want. I always try to think, if I were going through this situation, how would I want somebody helping me through this? And I want to be that for other people.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We took care of my mother-in-law because she was diagnosed with cancer at a very young age.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's been, if my wife is listening, she's going to be on me for not being able to count well, but it's been 20 years, give or take. And so, things like that just hit and overwhelm so quickly. It was barely a year's journey from diagnosis. And what are some assistance things that people need to be aware of, that when things like that hit, our first thought was not to turn to an attorney. I didn't even know that area of practice even helped, was there. So what are some resources, some assistance things that people need to be aware of?
I think that one of the big things that I try to talk to people about when I hear that there's been some sort of diagnosis or substantial change in circumstance is your general estate planning documents. So does the person who is likely going to need some assistance, have they formally named somebody or multiple people to help them through this process? That means, more specifically, have they named a power of attorney? A power of attorney document, I often say, is a document that you really need when you need it, but if you don't have it at the time that you need it, it's probably too late to get one. It is a document that allows somebody to step in on your behalf and handle financial transactions. The type of power of attorney I do most often is effective as soon as the document is signed. Meaning, if you name your wife as your power of attorney, it's effective the moment you sign that document. Now, that doesn't mean she has to go out and start handling all of the banking and that you can't do the banking yourself. It just means if you say, hey, I've got a work trip, I got to be out of town, we're selling the house, I need you as my power of attorney to sign off on the closing of the house. And then when you come back, you still handle all of your banking, all of that. So it doesn't really change your ability to make your own decisions. But it allows somebody else to seamlessly step in. So if you've got somebody going through a cancer diagnosis and they're trying to do treatments, my understanding is that there's going to be days where you just don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just feel horrible. And other days, maybe between treatments, where you're starting to feel a bit more like yourself. So a power of attorney would allow somebody else to go out on your behalf when you're stuck in bed not feeling well, but then you can go to the bank yourself when you feel okay. Yeah.
Right.
In addition to that, then a healthcare directive, making sure that the doctors know who to talk to if you can't tell them what your medical care should be. For somebody with cancer diagnosis, I would imagine that most of the time they have the mental cognition to be able to have those conversations. But unfortunately, especially with cancer and some other diagnoses, as you get further along in that process, there's more sleep, less ability to communicate with the doctors as to what your wants and needs are. The ones that I see, I always say as quickly as possible after a diagnosis, and I'm starting to hear that neurologists are telling patients to go see an attorney right away, is dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that, because you're going to decline.
Right.
In addition to the advance directive, which tells who should make medical decisions for you and what medical decisions should be made, I usually do a HIPAA document. I just want to make sure that the people you've named have access to your medical information instead of just say yes or no.
Right.
And they can get some information behind it. And then a really important document, of course, with that is a last will and testament. That's your opportunity to say who should be responsible for wrapping up your final affairs and who should receive your assets when you pass, whether it's your children, your grandchildren, the church, your favorite charity, whatever the case may be. We want to make sure that your wishes are followed. And that's where the last will and testament gives you that opportunity.
Man, that, I told you before we got on the air that, I went through some of this, and those things, if you take anything away from this podcast, I feel like those are such key things at this very moment that if you just embark on some of that, like I've got family that are going through health problems right now too, that we're trying to encourage them to think about some of those things, because these things are huge. And like you talked about, Jason, like it turns emotional because that whole part of life when there's a diagnosis, and then you have the process of dementia or cancer or, you name it. Like it just, there's a process that whatever that health thing is going to go through, if you can be on the front side of it to try to make sure that on the back side, if something goes wrong and you don't make it, then the people around you know what you wanted. Because 9 times out of 10, like, most people wanted what that person wanted, as far as what they wanted with their estate. But if you don't make it known,
exactly,
then it turns into a little bit of a battle. Like, well, Dad said I could have this, and Dad said I could have that, and
very much so.
And you hate to have that. I would hate for my estate to be a problem instead of a blessing.
Yes,
you know what I mean. And I'm sure you've bumped into that a time or two where what was supposed to be a blessing has turned into almost a negative.
It has, and I really try to avoid those.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of when I start to meet with families, I'm trying to understand not only the situation, let me see the document itself, and then in addition to that, tell me family dynamics. Does everyone get along? What do we have? Because it's not uncommon when all of a sudden you've often lost the matriarch or the patriarch of your family, kind of the glue that's held everybody together. Now, all of a sudden, that thing that Tommy did to me when I was 9, I haven't forgotten about that.
Right.
And I am bound and determined to make him remember that he did me wrong 50 years ago.
Right.
So,
exactly right.
I try to avoid those. I often refer them on to attorneys that do the courtroom, the litigation for that. But I think a lot of, I mentioned the power of attorney. If you don't know you need it until you need it. And if you don't have one, it's probably too late, or it may very well be too late. The alternative option to that is a formal guardianship, meaning we have to get the court involved. We have to have a doctor determine that you are an incapacitated person. We have to have everybody come to an agreement that some other person should be your guardian, meaning they are the one who makes decisions with regard to finances and your health care, whether you like them or not.
Right.
Because the court's determined that you can't make those decisions anymore. Ooh. All of your information is public. I have to file it all through the court. Your bank accounts, transactions in your bank accounts.
Oh my goodness.
Financial
really?
I every 2 years I have to file it with the court. Now I block out account numbers.
I was going to say, surely not account numbers.
Not
with
full
as
account
much
numbers.
hacking it goes. And,
there are some protections to make sure that they are protected. But in theory, anybody could go on to the court's website and say, well, this person's under guardianship. This is the person who's responsible, and here's how much money that person has. Now, I don't find that people tend to go through that system and look for that type of stuff, but it is a possibility. So,
and help me. I want to make sure I'm clear on this. That only occurs if the previous resources that we talked about are not in place.
Right.
So if you do not have a power of attorney or potentially an advance directive, right.
So that step is stuff that is taken if you're not prepared and okay, gotcha.
I will say occasionally we will have a situation where we have a power of attorney document and we still have to seek guardianship, and that's typically, in my experience, it has been because somebody has a memory loss issue of some kind, and they're not willing to give up that control yet, but they clearly cannot do it anymore. The reason we do the power of attorney is to try to avoid the guardianship route. And typically it helps. Very occasionally does it not.
So question then, all of these situations likely end in, it's a death situation. It's an end of life or chronic long-term care. So what does a win look like? What does a win look like for you?
In my opinion, it's making sure that the decedent or whoever is not doing well, that their wishes are followed. In reality, there's a lot of people that are going to step in and give their opinions as to what should be happening, and most of the time, I think they're just trying to be helpful.
Right.
But that's not necessarily always what the person wants. And so my goal is just to make sure that the right person is representing them, whether that's a close family member, or I have people come in and say, I don't want this to cause rift between my children. So I would like to name a third party, or I'd like to name my friend, or I feel very comfortable with my sibling handling this so that my kids don't have to. Or people are spread out throughout the world these days. And sometimes your kids are not even in the state of Indiana, or maybe not even in the U.S. And so it makes more sense to name somebody that they're very close to locally.
Right.
That's awesome. I mean, so since you've hung your own shingle out, do you feel like you've been able to, like your passion definitely comes through. So I'm curious to know, do you feel like you've been able to tackle some of the abilities of helping the people that you couldn't when you were at the bank?
Definitely.
Okay.
It's a little bit different area of law anyway, but yes, I definitely feel like I'm able to help the everyday person now.
That's awesome.
Can we pause real quick?
Yeah.
Explain, just in case, because this is a very new cliche for me, or phrase, hanging your own shingle.
Oh.
Explain that real quick, just in case.
So if you,
just in case somebody listens, like, what?
Once you start,
I'm not putting shingles on houses.
Really?
I should not.
Elder
No.
care and roofing.
Yeah. One-stop shop.
Yeah. So explain that real quick, just so
So-
that everybody understands.
You want to?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so if you're working for somebody else and you go out and you start your own business, it's often referred to as going out and hanging out your own shingle.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
but-
Just
so
for clarity's sake.
That's
you
quite
went
all right.
out on your own
I did.
2 years ago, correct?
It was the week of Thanksgiving 2 years
Ballpark.
ago. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how many people will you say that you've been able to help? Just to give me a rough number since you've started.
Oh my goodness.
It doesn't even have to be. Just give me a ballpark.
Oh gosh. I would say.
It's like 2, 25.
Oh gosh. I would say 5 to 10 people a month for 24
oh my
months.
goodness! Congrats. That's awesome.
If not more.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm helping each of them in their own way for
Right.
whatever they need. Sometimes
And those
it
are family
is-
units.
Right.
Yeah.
So that might be small family units or very large family units. And so,
Probably multiple facets too.
yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes it's helping them with an estate plan, like we've talked about, needing
Right.
that, or Medicaid qualifications for people who find themselves in need of nursing home level of care
Right.
and have not yet planned for that.
And for those that are listening to this, if you don't know, like you have made it sound very simple. And fortunately, or unfortunately, I've been through some of this, and it is not at
it is
all.
not, no.
Like there is processes that you've already had in place that make this simple. But I know from past experience in working with multiple attorneys prior to meeting you, that didn't go smoothly, that didn't end with the way we wanted them to, and we actually had to change.
Right.
So I know if you're listening to this is not as simple as she makes it, but I can honestly tell you, I love the fact that your passion's there. I love the fact that you're able to help so many people, and especially with something that has, I mean, if we were to look at the law with some of this, there's a lot of underlying rules and regulations to this, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. So for my estate planning and estate administration practice, I'm looking at Indiana state law. I'm looking at the probate code, is what we call it. That's what I'm looking for my guidance. When I'm looking at Medicaid qualifications, that's an entirely separate set of rules
Right.
that may or may not.
And how thick are those books?
I've not hundreds of pages.
Yes.
It truly is, and they change regularly. I will say one of the blessings during the pandemic is they haven't been allowed to change the rules, and
Nice.
so
Oh,
I have
wow.
had the same set of rules to process all of my Medicaid qualifications cases through since March of 2020. And we're still considered under the public health emergency, so they're still not allowed to change those rules. Right now, it's supposed to end October 15th. The rumor is they may extend that to December. But I mean, I would love for COVID to go away. However, I kind of like the lack of rule changing.
The consistency's been nice.
It's been very nice.
Because it changes a lot, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it can change regularly.
Okay.
They have to tell us. There's a whole section I have to go to see what they've changed. And they even have to report if they change punctuation because it didn't have a period or it needed a comma. So you have to wade through, okay, was it just, adding
Grammatical
appropriate
versus
grammatical,
code,
versus actual, legal changes. So,
wow.
yeah,
How fun.
it's yeah.
Man. Yeah,
So-
you said it. How fun. Yeah. Not for me.
Yeah. So,
No, that's probably the least fun part. But I'm grateful for that they do share that with us, and I don't have
Right.
to read the whole thing
Yeah.
every single time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great.
so since we mentioned the hanging of shingles,
Not on your roof.
what has been one of the biggest challenges for you that has come apart from the law practice, but actually starting your own small business?
Not doing everything myself, or
Okay.
not trying to do everything myself. I have regularly been pretty good about delegating tasks to other people, but when you hang your own shingle, there's nobody to delegate to.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's, trying to make sure that I have time to meet with people, but then also set aside time for actual paperwork, setting aside time for emails, returning phone calls. One of my big things is communication. I really want to try to make sure that I'm getting back to my clients within, 24 hours, 48 hours of their telephone call to me, especially because if they're calling me, there's probably some traumatic event going on, and I
Right.
don't want
Right.
them to sit upset about what's going on, and then also like, why have I not heard from Kim? Why has she not called me back yet? So a lot of that's my own pressure I've put on myself, but I still, again, want to treat people the way I would want to be treated in the same
Right.
type of situation. So that's the biggest thing. So thankfully, my husband's actually a paralegal in a very similar area of law.
Oh, cool.
And so it helps me with some of my drafting of estate planning stuff. He doesn't know the Medicaid area. And then I share office space with another attorney who also has kind of a complementary practice area. And he and I have hired an assistant, and she's wonderful. So she's come in and really taken phone calls off of my list.
That's what I was just thinking.
Which is really great. She's wonderful. If she ever has a question, she comes straight to me. How do I answer this question? I'll call them right back so that they get their answers very quickly.
That's cool.
Yeah, she handles all of the scheduling of my appointments, which is good because, again, just I want to help so many people that I was like, okay, can somebody else get our kids this day, and then they can take them to that, and then I can meet with this extra client, and it was really starting to impact my family because
Yeah.
my husband's like, I'm not a single parent here.
Right.
We need some contribution here too. So, and not in a bad way. He was very kind
Yeah.
about
Healthy.
it.
This
but
sounds like healthy boundary
Yeah. Well,
that-
conversation,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, managing family like that takes so much energy.
Totally does.
Absolutely. So I said, I need somebody else to be that front person because I will just keep trying to fit people in. And then I have no
Right.
time to do paperwork. I have no time to return phone calls or emails. And then I'm
Right.
stressed and I'm just not a fun person to be around. So she's done a wonderful job of helping me with that. I'm hopeful to bring on somebody soon that can handle a bit more of the legal side as well. Meeting with clients, gathering paperwork. As you unfortunately know, the Medicaid qualification process is very labor intensive. It's a ton of paperwork.
Yep.
The packets that I submit to Family and Social Services are often 1 inch to 2 inches thick, full
Holy
of paperwork.
smokes.
I submitted one before I came over here today, and that file is probably this thick. So what,
Are you
7
serious?
inches thick? And I was submitting more paperwork. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
a unique one, but
yeah, but still, I mean, it's like that's
Yeah.
one client. I mean, so you're spending a lot of time on all that paperwork.
Yep. And so sometimes people kind of, recoil when I tell them what my legal fee is, but I am doing a lot through
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
process. So,
And there's a lot for you to have to cover to make sure that you're staying on top of it as well. Yeah.
so
Which costs time,
absolutely.
which
So,
is amazing. That's
yeah.
awesome.
So I would say my biggest challenge has been finding people to delegate to,
Right.
but I'm working on that.
Yep.
Trying to get that in place. And then Jason and I met and we talked about processes and procedures and how, for me, it makes the most sense to try to move forward.
That's awesome.
Whether it's hiring more support staff, whether it's hiring another attorney, or what that process might look like so that I can continue to provide the highest level of service that I would like to be providing
Right.
to as many people as possible.
Right.
I really anticipate that as our baby boomers continue to age,
Right.
that we're probably going to find ourselves in a situation where we have more and more people in need of nursing home level of care that maybe have not planned for that.
I'd agree.
Right.
And so I want to be as available as I can be. And I'm limited because I only have so many hours in the day too.
Right.
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 So I'm trying to figure out processes and procedures and what the future of my business might look like so that I can try to help as many as I can reasonably help. But I also take it very seriously. If I don't get somebody qualified when I feel like I should be getting them qualified, that could potentially be the difference of an extra $8,000 to $10,000 out of their pocket that they weren't planning on being able to spend or weren't able to spend.
Right.
Right.
And that really weighs on me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a heavy expense too for
Yeah, it is.
somebody that's in that predicament.
Mm-hmm.
That $10,000 is a lot of money,
It absolutely is.
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's great. I gotta say, it's great that you've been able to take the time to put the processes in place so that because inevitably, it feels like to me, Jason, you tell me, you're probably better knowing about this, but it seems like when we put those processes in place, we can reach out more and do more to help more people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
When we streamline the back end,
Right.
we have more for
Some
that.
of these things that you're
Yeah.
being able to delegate.
Absolutely.
That's awesome that you've been able
Absolutely.
to go
And it's
through
easier
that.
to bring on the support staff. It's easier to bring on another attorney to say, here's, everything from mission, vision, values to here's how we handle phone calls,
Right.
from the top to bottom, here's our culture, here's our system, here's how we, deal with things. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were to start all this over, okay, go back, rewind it to 4 or 5 years, how would you do things just a little bit differently? What would you catch in those early days that you're
The processes and procedures before I even
Okay.
got out on my
before you
own.
needed them? Yeah. Yeah.
That's actually really
Because
smart.
it's all been in my head. And so, again, when
Yeah.
I had nobody to delegate to, I had it in my head, which really wasn't a good plan anyway. But, yeah, I would have done it much sooner.
Okay. Very cool.
That's interesting.
What's maybe the best piece of advice that you have ever received, whether it was from your education, from some of your mentors, advice that you've just carried on through the years that's been critical and key to you?
I really think my dad's favorite is Jiminy Cricket. Conscious. Always let your conscience be your guide. I think just trying to do right by people, making sure that if it's important to me, that I'm doing right by people, that's what I'm doing, and that
Right.
my goal be heading in that direction.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's good.
I was not expecting a Disney quote, but
I mean, I'm a huge Disney fan.
well, yeah, but
So,
I mean,
It was good.
That's solid.
though. It is.
That
Like,
was,
Yeah.
it is good.
it kind of just goes back to the same thing, which is oftentimes is the simple stuff is the important stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't tell you the last time I saw Pinocchio, but I definitely know who Jiminy Cricket is.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, Kim, how if somebody is sitting out there going, we've got a situation approaching that we should probably get some guidance on. How would they get a hold of you? How would they find you?
Yeah, they can go to my website, which is jewellelderlaw.com, and Jewell has 2 L's, so JEWELLELDERLAW.com, or my phone number is 317-705-8805. I always offer no obligation initial consultations. So I know a lot of people are really frightened of attorneys or we have a bad reputation. I promise I'm not like the rest of them. And there are some really great attorneys out there.
There are, yeah.
But I want to sit down with each person, look at their specific situation and give them advice based on their specifics. Because I've never had 2 people walk into my office with the exact same situation. If they say, thank you so much for the information, there's nothing that we want for you to do right now, then they don't owe me anything for that first meeting.
Right.
They at least have the right information so that they can proceed from there. If I do legal work for them, then I give them a quote for what that would be.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay.
Cool.
I mean, I think at least in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking, in moments of crisis, the nurture that I need to turn to, lawyer is not at the top of the list.
No.
And I feel like that perception has been changed just sitting here talking to you.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I'll call Kim.
Yeah, right. You're passionate and nurturing of that. It just is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us and sharing
Absolutely.
your stuff with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We're glad to have it. All right, we'll be back here in just a moment.
Jason, I'm so thankful that you invited her to be involved with our podcast today, because she just gave so much great information that I'm sure that as a business leader, these things are kind of, or even not as a business leader, even as just somebody that's, trying to work through life, like some of these things are huge just in case.
Right. I mean, yes, Kim is focused around elder law.
Right.
But as, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner, you need to be thinking about your business in terms of, what if tragedy strikes you?
Right.
Whether that's on a business trip or your family vacation, or, it is an end of life or, a diagnosis of some sort. Who has the keys to the kingdom?
Right. And it's going to affect the people that you love the most.
Right.
Like, so if you don't set that up right, it can go, it cannot go, like, it can go with the way you don't want it to.
Right.
And truly, like, I'm sure that you thought about this too, is like, you don't want what you've worked hard to build for to become a burden for the people after you.
Right.
Like, the whole purpose of why we do what we do is probably to bless our family, right? If that turns into a burden, like, it's kind of all for naught, I feel like.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just my feeling, but I just...
Well, I mean, they might eventually get the legacy you want to leave,
right?
But it's like you said, a burden. And you mentioned, I think, this during the interview, is I want it to be a blessing,
right?
And so how can you set things up in advance so that things just go so much smoother for your family at some point?
Yeah.
And and I think people are probably thinking, wow, this is so morbid to think about,
right?
But I mean, you plan for your next vacation.
Right.
You plan for the next business you want to open.
Right.
You plan for retirement. Why not plan for this?
Right.
I mean, we're all dying.
Right. Well, and truly,
we're all 2 minutes closer to dying than when we started this outro.
Right.
And so we need to plan for it.
Yeah.
And it's not morbid.
Well, and it's not just that too. It's also the stuff that the accidents, the stuff that happens like randomly. I just had a friend get hurt at a lake not too long ago, and I mean, he's going to be fine, but it's like, well, it could have not been fine.
Right.
And if I wasn't, like, am I ready for that? Like, I know recently my wife and I met with another attorney prior to me meeting Kim, and I was like, wow, you don't think about some of these things, and they are so important.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I lost my train of thought going into this, but yeah.
Yeah. So I really, thanks for inviting her today, and thanks for, I'm so thankful that she came and shared what she did, and I kind of felt like we got off a little bit and didn't really talk about her story as much, but she had so much great information for people that are listening that it was kind of hard to stop her, because it's such important stuff.
Yeah. I mean, some of the things that her and I have been talking about, her passion just bleeds through.
It totally does.
Her desire just to serve and help people, which unfortunately, there's so many lawyer jokes out there,
right.
None of them joke about that,
Right.
But she truly does bring a comfort in that end of life planning. Oh, I remember what it was now. There's my train of thought back. That how complicated today is compared to 10 years ago,
right? With
all of the advancements of digital technology, and now I can get into my bank account with my Face ID,
right, or
a thumbprint,
right?
Not but how many stinking passwords do we have?
For sure.
How does power of attorney affect that? I mean, oh my goodness, yeah. So these are things we should be thinking about,
right?
In all realms of our lives, and
take this opportunity to make sure you're thinking through this stuff,
right?
Because This is one of those wake up call moments that, hey, if you
Right.
if you don't do something with this information, you're
And
probably going to be upset with yourself
Now
later.
is the time to interview people like him.
Yes.
To, sit down with in that initial consultation and learn what that lawyer's goals are. Is it to help nurture and take care of,
Right.
like Kim does?
Right.
I mean, that's the person you want. So,
Yeah, I mean, if anything, we've definitely learned that her passion just comes through for her people.
yes.
She is just a phenomenal lady, and I'm super excited about her. Her being able to hang out her own shingle,
Yeah.
and be able to serve those people well.
Right. Right.
Super exciting, which is exactly what we wanted on this podcast.
Absolutely.
Is rock star people like
Absolutely. So look up, Jewell Law Office, or and we'll have her.
Her information.
We'll have her information in the show notes that you can
good.
just click on easily and go to her website. Give her a call.
Give her a call.
We're just excited to know people like Kim and have the opportunity to sit down with her. So you guys give us a like, subscribe, send us an email if there's something you got questions about. We'd love to chat with you.
For sure.
So
Thanks again.
keep leading as servant and fighting for the highest good of others.
Have a great day.
Catch you later.